Sit your ass down. Sit your ass down. Let's talk about the suffering. It's time to start the pay. Sit your ass down. Sit your ass down and strap in. This is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt. Let's talk about the suffering. It's time to start the pain. This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast. If you had all the time in the world, what would you do with it? Would you read, educate yourself, find a new vocation, exercise, or waste away with some much-needed rest? We move in this life so fast that we often have little or no time to sit and think. We reorganize the path and the direction that our life is taking to pump the brakes on our busy lives. Suddenly, an event happens that forces us to look at our lives from an elevated position on the battlefield. When that time comes, it's frequently too late to change the past. Here is your moment to shine, or live with regret. The smart ones choose to change the trajectory and move forward using their past to reshape their future. And welcome back to another episode of the Suffering Podcast. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace. And on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we sit down with Seth Ferranti to discuss the suffering of an ex-con filmmaker, because that's pretty much what you are. Seth, thank you so much for joining us, coming all this way from California. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
I mean, it's like an odd mixture, you know, ex-con filmmaker.
Ex-con filmmaker. Well, you get to redefine your terms, I guess, as you get older.
Yeah, you know, I am ex-con and filmmaker, but I kind of been trying to brand myself like the outlaw filmmaker. You know, like my company's called Outlaw Films.
Right.
You know, my parent company's called like Guerrilla Convict. That's from the publishing house I formed while I was in. But yeah, I don't know. I just see it like you got so many people in the film industry that they want to come to crime, you know, either from the cop side or the criminal side. And if any of us can even get involved as like a consultant, you know, like we're lucky.
Well, that's why, because you have a certain perspective, and I want to get into this later on in the show, because you have a perspective on, say, a crime show that these producers, they're not going to know, because we see it from a police standpoint, where when you make a police movie, Mike and I will watch that police movie within 2 seconds, say, you're full of shit, you didn't do your research. All right. Before we get into anything, let's get into this week's social media question, but I do want to thank Toyota of Hackensack. Listen, Toyota Hackensack always treats us very well. I buy my cars there. And if you're looking for a car, let them help you find a car. They're always honest. They're upfront. As cops, we don't trust anybody, but I do trust the people at Toyota of Hackensack. Go to toyotahackensack.com and they'll help you out. So this week's social media question comes from Ken. Every week we take some, and some of them are, I'm going to tell you right now, some of them are out there. But this one's actually pretty good. It says, Ken writes, what have you always hoped you've done in your life? So you're our guest today, Seth. What's one thing that you've always hoped that you've done? Maybe you didn't get a chance to do it yet.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing, and I think I kind of live my life like this, is I just try to, you know, complete what I set out to do, you know. So
finish the task.
Yeah, so I mean, and this is ongoing, you know. It started with like articles, books, now films. So I'm just trying, you know, it's like a continual thing. I like to make stuff. I like to create stuff. So, you know, once I take a project on or I decide to do something, I just want to finish it, you know. So it's kind of like keeping my word, you know, to people, but also keeping my word to myself.
I like that answer. I like that answer a lot. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I mean, growing up, I never really hoped to do a podcast with you, but here I am stuck doing it. I always hoped to be a football player, but then I realized I was too short and too slow.
Usually got to be about 5'2" to play football.
See, now it's fucked up. One thing I really wanted to do in my life, I want to like jump out of an airplane.
I did it. It's pretty damn cool.
That's like a bucket list thing of mine. But at 56, you know, my bones are a little brittle and I don't.
So you'll go tandem. So the first time you jump, you'll go tandem.
I don't want a guy strapped to my back like that, though.
You will get power fucked into the ground if that parachute doesn't open.
Oh, yeah, without doubt. Yeah.
And usually the guys that strapped to the back, you smell so bad. They
And now,
always do.
If they come out with some like hot looking women that will hang on my back, then maybe I'll do it.
For me, it's real simple. I have zero. I always consider myself very creative, but I have zero musical ability. I always wanted to learn how to play the piano. So years ago, I can type very fast. My grandmother was a government secretary on a manual typewriter. She used to do over 200 words a minute. So I learned from her, and I can type very fast. So I figured, hey, I can type. I can learn to play the piano. There was never a more untrue statement than that, because the piano and the typewriter are exact opposites. So and it's not too late, I can do it now. And everybody says that it gets a little easier as you get older, but I always wanted to learn how to play the piano or guitar or some musical instrument because I do love music. It's real simple. Ken, thank you so much for sending that question in. Keep sending them in. We'll try to get them on the air.
Listen, if you get in a band, I am not coming to see you. I could just picture you on stage, that big fat body bouncing all around, trying to play a fucking guitar.
See, he's all pissed off today. He didn't have his Cheerios this morning or something. Seth, I've done a lot of reading about you, and the reason I picked out ex-con filmmakers because I think I read a website, right? That's how they characterize you. But I want you to give our audience a little bit of window into who you are, where you grew up.
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in California. I was born in Lemoore. It's actually between San Diego, LA, out in the desert. They call it the Central Coast. I was actually born on a military base out there. That's where they train like the fighter pilots, out in the desert. So if they crash,
it's like Top Gun, right?
Yeah. So and then, but my dad was in the military, so we kind of bounced around. I was a military brat, but like we were San Diego, but I also lived in Germany. I lived in England. I lived Virginia Beach, Rhode Island, Monterey, San Jose.
Now, that was at like a young age where you bounced around all that young?
Yeah. Basically every 2 years,
That'd be tough, like making friends, and then all of a sudden it's just like, see you later.
Yeah, it's weird because I think everything that I do, because I got like, as a creative person, I got like this big thing for recognition. Like I'm always craving recognition. That's why like I make shit and put it out to the world. And I think it all stems, I'm 51 now, so I've thought about it a lot. And I think it stems from that, moving around every 2 years. And, as soon as I get a group of friends and people knew who I am, it's like we would move again. So
you have to create your whole new world.
Reestablish yourself again.
Yeah. So as a young man or as a kid, and even a teenager, it was, it led to a lot of insecurity, on the inside, nothing outwardly that people could see. But, yeah, I've done a lot of, recollecting and kind of introspection. And I think that's kind of like, that's my whole thing. I want people to know who I am. So like I try to create these, grand work of arts, they're going to have an impact. And so everybody's going to know my name. So,
well, it's better to know your name for your works of art instead of your former life.
Well, there's got to be a good part about that. You hook up with a girl and it's like a hit and run, You hook up with her, she starts getting serious, and all of a sudden you say, gotta go.
So growing up in California, and being in California now, you in California have the most interesting street signs. I don't know whether they're still up there. I know they were up there in 2000 when I was out in San Diego, the 3 people crossing the road. Are they still up?
Man, I don't even know.
So when I was in San Diego, you're driving down, was that 5?
Yeah.
Going north-south? They had street signs when you got closer to the Mexican border. 3 people in like a running, it's like a school crossing sign, but 3 people running. So I asked somebody, I go, what's the sign? He goes, because people are coming over the border and they're running across Route 5 and they're getting whacked. I said, it was the strangest street sign I ever seen in my life. But yeah, California is like a whole different world. How do you like living out there?
Oh no, I love California because I'm I love the mountains. So I'm like, I love to ski. I just love to be in the mountains. So, but I also love the beach. So California is pretty much the only place you can be where you can go from the mountains and 3 hours and you're at the beach. So
I was gonna say you could like lay on the beach all day and go skiing at night in California.
Yeah, it's incredible. And even like where I live now, I live in Chico, and it's kind of like the valley. It's like farming community. It's between the Sierra Nevadas and it's between the coastal mountains. And it's just the weather, man. Like I just go out. Like I can go sit in my backyard. It's like 75 degrees.
Well, that was San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego's like that too.
Fantastic weather.
I'd never seen anything like it. I don't think I slept more than 3 hours the whole 3 weeks I was out there because I just didn't want to miss anything. And listen, San Diego, I had a hotel room. I was right at the bridge of Coronado. I couldn't ask for a better thing. But California, it's an odd place, and everybody classifies California by L.A. Like that's what, and now San Francisco. So California does get a bad rap because
I know you've been to San Francisco. I'm staying away
And
from
LA
that.
and LA is a clusterfuck. I don't, I got to go to LA a lot, because I got a lot of friends in the industry there. So I'm there, at least once every 2 months. But it's just the traffic, man. I cannot stand it. There's so many people there, man. It's crazy.
well, now it's got the bad homeless situation there, and it's sort of the city's got to do something because it's got to
I've
implode.
seen like pictures of like Muscle Beach and all the like
it's
Venice
bad.
Beach and all that. It's like a homeless heaven now.
When I went out there, that's the place I had to go. I
Yeah,
had
they
to go
got all the
see Muscle
crazy
Beach.
people out there too. Actually, I love Venice Beach, man, because it's kind of it's beautiful. It's California, but at the same time, it has like that real seedy element, and like you never know what's gonna happen. But like I say, some people don't like to. I like to go there and walk around, but I'm not scared that anybody's gonna do anything to me. So
But the vast majority of California is, like you said, mountains, deserts, beauty, beaches. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful out there. It just gets a little.
and it's so big, man. It's like, dude, like I live in Chico, so Chico's basically between San Francisco and Lake Tahoe, right? And I'm like 2.5 hours to Tahoe, 2.5 hours to Frisco, right? Maybe about, I don't know, 8 hours from LA. But then like you can go like you go all the way up north, like into the Emerald Triangle. That's like 5 hours, and it just goes. It's like straight mountains on the coast. It just goes, for like hours and hours before you get to Oregon. So, and then that's not even talking about like you go to LA. It's like another couple hours down to San Diego. So the state is just so big. It's like it's really almost like its own country.
Yeah, well, that's why it's got so much pull in the whole world because of its size. So you grew up in these military bases, and your father was I'm assuming your father was military.
Yeah.
What was he?
No, he was a Marine.
He was a Marine.
Yeah.
Okay, so you somehow get involved in this life of crime. I don't. I've grown up with military kids before, and they do usually go one way or the other. They either ultra strict or they just take that other road. How did you?
We see that in law enforcement too. Most of the bad kids out there are cops' kids.
Yeah, oh, for parties.
Oh, yeah.
The best parties
Without doubt.
were at cops'
And
kids.
fireworks, too.
Yeah, because we confiscated them from
Confiscate the fireworks and give them to the kids.
So how did you go down this other path?
Yeah, I think I was just it's from the whole thing like moving around, right? I kind of figured out like when I was 13, I wanted people to know who I am. I wanted that acceptance. Like I craved that recognition, so like when I was 13 and I kind of started experimenting with marijuana, I started experimenting with like psychedelics like LSD, mushrooms, stuff like that. And I was always the kid, that I could go and I was a bold, brash kid, so I would get this stuff. So, everybody wants to party, they pull their money together, and I was the one that would actually go score, so I figured out really quick, within the first couple of years doing this, by the time I was 15, that I was like, like I can get high for free, and after I figured this out, then it was like another realization. Probably by the time I was like 16, I was like, I can get high for free and I can make money.
Wow.
And then
it gave you acceptance in that crew.
Well, yeah, because
the acceptance you didn't have moving around the whole time.
The next evolution in this was like, I figured out like, okay, if I'm the guy that's bringing the weed and psychedelics, I'm like, then I'm like a rock star. Like everybody knows my name. Everybody's waiting for me to go to the party. So I'm saying this was like a 3-year thing, that it took me to, this transition, from 13, 14, 15, 16, where I had these kind of realizations. And then by the time I was 16, I was like, this is, everybody knows who I am now. This is what I wanted. This is what I craved. All the girls know who I am.
That was the George Young. That's what attracted George Young to it. Yeah.
It's a popularity,
Right.
it really.
And you got some money now too.
I never thought I don't know why I've never put that together. Like you always wonder why people get into dealing or doing something on the drug side. It makes perfect sense now. It really does make sense.
Yeah.
But that's why I love doing this show, because I get to see that different perspective on things.
Yeah. So by the time I'm 16, I'm basically, I'm like a rock star, but I'm not a rock star, but I'm a rock star because, I go like even the older people, like 18, 19, 20, the people that graduated, the people in college, they're still waiting for me. I'm the one.
You're getting invited to all the college parties and stuff.
I mean, I'm the one, and whatever it is about me, because I was always bold, brash, like, and I was big too, like
I was going to say,
like
you're a big guy
13
now. Were you bigger then, too?
Like 13, I was 6'1" by the time I was 13, and I was already shaving at 13. I mean, obviously I was a young man, so I was a lot skinnier. I mean, as you get older, you gain weight, you get bigger. Plus, I did 21 years in prison, so I did a lot of weightlifting and working out and shit like that. But yeah, but I just always, like I was the type of kid, like when I was 14, I was dating like 16, 17-year-olds, and it was all, it was because I was a bigger dude, but it was all because of how I carried myself and the access I got. Because like I'm telling you, I was 17. I would go down. I'm in Northern Virginia at this point. By the time I was 17, my dad actually retired, and he was working in the Pentagon for a defense contractor. So I would fly down when I was 17 to Texas, Dallas, Texas, and through like mutual friends down there that went to college down there, I hooked up with like a Mexican national who had like a trucking company, and he was bringing in like brick pot, right? And he would get it up to Dallas, and I would go down there and like. I went down there and I maybe had enough money to buy like, 10 pounds or 20 pounds, which we're talking like $400 each. So you're talking about maybe 4 to 8 grand.
Yeah, but it's pure though, right? You can cut it up.
No, I mean, I mean, I don't know. You don't really cut weed up, I mean, weed is weed, it's brick pot. It's like, it's not that weed back then compared to the weed we have now was garbage. The brick pot was garbage. But it was the only thing that was coming in at that time, except in the fall when they would have the harvest, like in the Emerald Triangle or Kentucky, you would get good weed for about 3 months. But I was going down there, and whatever it was about me, like my confidence or whatever, like I convinced this dude, to basically give me like, front me like 50 or 100 pounds. I packed it in a suitcase, flew back up, checked it, and went right to DC National and picked it up right off the turnstile.
Wow.
That's
to try to do
yeah.
that today.
I don't think you could do it today. I don't. I mean, because back then you
Those
could
damn
just
dogs in the airport will pick it right up.
I mean, you could just go to the airport back then and you could pay cash for a ticket. I would pay cash for a one-way ticket, and I would tell them my name was John Smith. This is like pre-Patriot Act.
Right.
So they didn't have all the licenses. I mean, they wasn't really big on money. I mean, you could really, because they only had like the metal detectors. So
That's some brass balls,
yeah,
though.
Yeah, but that's kind of how, I just developed, all these, access to like drug dealers. I think, like when you come, it's like anything in life. When you're confident and you tell them like, because that's why, like in the drug trade, like they'll be like, oh, because big distributors, they're looking for people who can move their shit.
Right.
So, they're like, oh, can you take 50? Can you do that? And a lot of people are like, oh, no, I can't do that. Or they don't want to have the responsibility. I was the type of dude, I would just jump on it. I'd be like, yeah, give me whatever. I'll move it.
I was going to say, from moving around from area to area, how do you keep up that trade? I mean, you gotta get yourself involved with like these bigger drug dealers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I moved around a lot as a kid. So, my dad retired from the military probably, about 86, when I was probably like 16, and we settled in Northern Virginia. And that's kind of where, my whole thing started. But, also from growing up in California, I had contacts in California, friends, that childhood friends or whatever. And I would go back to California too a lot of times in the summer, and visit and stuff. So kind of like they got involved in kind of like the Dead counterculture, Grateful Dead counterculture scene. I kind of got involved in the Grateful Dead counterculture scene. So then, once we get like 16, 17, and 18, and we're kind of like comparing notes. So I got to the point like, for the LSD, I could get them to ship LSD like through the mail, to me in Northern Virginia, and I would supply all the colleges. I could get them to ship, and like we're talking, this is like 88, 89. Right. I could get them like in the Emerald Triangle where they grew like what we call kind bud back then, as opposed to the Mexican brick pot. I would get them to like mail me, because back then, the farmers, they were only trying to get maybe like 20, 30 pounds a year, because they grow in the mountains up there. So they, grow on the side of the mountains and everything. There were so many helicopters and stuff from the war on drugs. They really concentrated on that area. So a lot of these farmers, they were just trying to get like 20, 30 pounds a year. And that's how, they made their money. But they were selling like each of those pounds for probably, like $3-4 grand. And then like down the line, people are paying like whatever, $100 a quarter, which is like $6,400 a pound. So that's how you can make money on it.